Let me ask you this question, brother. You are always in Africa. You got the African Day Parade. You don't see the Africans. You got the festival that be going on in Brooklyn, the band festival, the African festival. Where's the Africans at? When we doing our rallies and our marches, where's the Africans at on your side? Talk to us really about that, man.
See, let me tell you something. We think slavery in America was something. Slavery in Africa is still in force. You talking about deaf, blind, and dumb. Don't confuse you because somebody got on some printed cloth that's printed in Holland or
Greetings to you and welcome to today's special reactional video. You know, I deem it such an honor and a privilege and a blessing, to react to this particular special video of uh, the most honorable Professor James Small. You know, if I were to state one man that has helped me, you know, in my journey to self discovery, in my journey to knowledge of self, in my journey to self consciousness, and in my journey to actually, uh, you know, understanding myself and my place in this world as a black person or as an African. I would say it is no other person than Professor James Small. You know, he's that man, he's that great man that has helped me restore my consciousness and that has helped me actually to actually fall in love with myself, because the only way through which you love yourself is when you know yourself. And to know yourself means that you need to know yourself in and out, right? Which includes your personal, but more especially also your history. I mean, your personal history as an individual, meaning your family lineage and whatever, but more especially the culture of your people. That is very, very important. And no other person, no other revolutionist or Pan Africanist taught me this than Professor James Small, because most of the other Pan Africanists and most of the other revolutionists and activists or whatever you may want to call them, or conscious speakers, all right, most African conscious speakers are often, interested in the political aspect of things. All right, most of them are in the political aspect of things, and some were even in the religious aspect of things. But Professor James Small is the exception. He, in my opinion, is the complete professor that I've listened to, you know, so far. With all due respect to all the other ancestors and even living activists, who risk their life, to conscientize Africans and Black people in general, and to actually, you know, help us, develop ourselves, right, as a people. With all due respect to all of them, I think one of the key limitations that most of them have is the lack of, should I say, the lack of spiritual and cultural consciousness. You see, so and this can be said of most of the great African leaders that we've had in the past. Okay, and even be it on the African continent, people like our Nkrumah of Ghana, people like, you know, Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, people like Jomo Kenyatta. Of course, Jomo Kenyatta, he had the spiritual consciousness. I would say to some extent, I'm here to read more about him. But he said, when the white man came to Africa, they gave us the Bible and asked us to pray. As we close our eyes to pray, they took away our resources, enslaved us, and what have you. And we now had the Bible in hand. So I would say maybe Jomo Kenyatta. I'm here to read more into his cultural life as a leader, you know, or should I say his spiritual life as a leader, whether he was a true conscious, you know, African leader in terms of, let's say, cultural consciousness. This is what I mean, right? Or but I think he's maybe one of the few, right? But most of them, in Nkrumah, for instance, he actually ignited a fire for the independence of most African states, right? Though he actually got that consciousness from the states, people like W.E. Du Bois and people like, Professor James Small were the ones that helped. Um, it was thanks to, their activism and works that, people like Nkrumah were able to be cultured and, educate, to come and fight for Africa, right? We all know that history. So, but what I wanted to say was that Nkrumah, for instance, lacked the cultural consciousness, if I may say. Of course, he was a great leader. He fought for our independence. He inspired people like Sekou Toure, named them Patrice Lumumba of Congo, and many other leaders, Thomas Sankara and what have you, revolutionists that we've had, all right? But most of these leaders, including Nkrumah, they do not see the importance of the cultural consciousness, and say if you have to say cultural, then you have to talk about the spiritual consciousness, right? African spirituality and its importance in government and in all aspects. We can talk about the Haitian Revolution. It was actually carried out what in African spiritual system, you know, right? Voodoo was part of it, all right? That is who we are. We are a spiritual people, and that element is very, very important because when you leave your culture, and as a matter of fact, it's not just all about spirituality. You see, uh, the cultural. You see, we often confuse things. We often think like religion is apart, and then the culture of the people is apart. That's what they make us believe, so that they can subjugate us. And by subscribing to foreign religions means that we simply what? Subscribe to their ways of life and their culture and turn our backs to our ancestors and our way of living, you see. But if we are to leave the spiritual aspect aside, within your culture, in addition to your religion, which is found within your culture, you would also find what? Your politics, that defines which political system you are to adopt. That's why, for instance, Saudi Arabia, they have kingdoms. Most Africans were actually kingdoms, all right? Before the introduction of Western democracy after slavery and colonialism, we were having what? Kingship, all right? And so within your culture, you would find your religion, which is the African spirituality. Some may call it voodoo, some may call it in my language, Dagari, we call it Sankono. You know, Dagari is a northern Ghanaian language, and it's just people of Dagati or Dagari. They are also found in Burkina Faso and even in Cote d'Ivoire, right? Um, in Twi in Ghana, I don't know what we call. I do speak Twi, but I don't know how we call. Uh, some would say it'll come later. I don't. I would teach you tree in another video. But let's stick to the topic. All right. But I just wanted to say that within your culture, you would find your politics, you find your spirituality or your religion is found within your culture, but they fool us to think that religion is apart. Okay, religion is just apart, and then the people's culture is apart. So that has reduced our cultural consciousness to just wearing of clothes. Meaning that's why he's saying if you are wearing a piece of cloth painted in Holland that was sold to us and termed as African wear, you know, then you would think you are culturally African, but you have no cultural African cultural values. You have no African cultural African spirituality is not within you. You are practicing a foreign religion. You have no in terms of your politics, you are not abiding or going by any African system of governance. Your constitution is not based on was not designed by our ancestors or whatever. You know, your currency is actually printed elsewhere. Your what else can I name? Just name it. Our marriage systems. The lady has to wear a wig or a weave. They have to wear weaves, take off their natural hair, and then paint their faces and put on white garment as if just to look as much as possible as the European or the white person because of the colonial mindset. This is the damage that culture, the lack of cultural integrity, causes. You see, so this is our current state as a people. So within your culture, all these elements are there. You know, name them. So it was people like Professor James Small that made me understand that, as if somebody aspires to be an African leader or to be a leader, then for a person to be complete, the fellow should have, in addition to geopolitics, the fellow should have what African consciousness and should know the importance of African spirituality in, as an important component of what leadership. You see, so it's people like Professor James Small that gave me this consciousness, and he is actually into deep research into African culture. He's often in Ghana. He's actually initiated, as a traditional priest, in many different African spiritual systems. So he's a very powerful man spiritually and consciously, politically and everything. That's why I'm saying he's complete, but it doesn't mean all those other leaders who fought the political struggle were not smart as he is. That's not what I'm trying to say. As a matter of fact, most of those leaders probably, it also depends on the era because at that time, it was like people were trying to free themselves from slavery. So you resort to just the physical and political aspects of things. You will not pay the attention to these other aspects. You see, but Haiti is a good example. They incorporated this. They actually were able to lead a full revolution, and that led to Haiti actually freeing themselves and becoming the first black nation to regain its independence. Right. So it's people like Professor James Small that really helped me understand this very well. So I think I've taken a lot of time to speak about who he is, all right, and why I admire him so much. Well, you heard it all. Whether you're an African watching this video or you're an African American, I think we just need to understand that just as this elder and grandpa said, Professor James Small, slavery is still reinforced in Africa. Mental slavery, for that matter, you see, and all other forms of slavery is still going on. So we should just have some compassion and understand that we just need each one teach one. That is the way forward, and we should have patience and some compassion. If not, I mean, when we are divided at the end of the day, who wins? None of us is going to win. We are only going to make the work easier for the oppressor. That is how it is. They actually want to see us divided and, fighting among ourselves. You see, so we should just understand that it is unfortunate, but that is we just need to understand and have some compassion for each other. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and please remember to subscribe, hit the like button, and share your comments and remarks within the comment section. Black love.